A24's The Drama, starring Robert Pattinson and Zendaya, has just arrived in theatres, and after seeing it, I think Kristoffer Borgli's film is a sharp, unsettling blend of romantic comedy, psychological tension, and social satire. Whether you walk out intrigued, unsettled, or somewhere in between, it's the kind of movie that practically demands a discussion afterwards. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you my breakdown of The Drama, discussing the meaning of the ending, and giving you my overall thoughts on the film. There will be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen the film yet, then I would recommend checking it out before watching my analysis. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my videos on the latest movie releases like The Drama, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my breakdown and review of A24's The Drama. So A24's The Drama is a film that is primed to provoke discussion. The marketing sold a glossy, star-powered romantic comedy, but the film itself is far more jagged, morally thorny, and deliberately uncomfortable. Borgli, who was known for previous films with Dream Scenario and Sick of Myself, once again crafts a narrative where the central characters are judged for conceptual crimes rather than literal ones, and he uses that premise to interrogate how we decide who deserves empathy. His new film opens quietly, almost deceptively warm, and we see how Charlie and Emma first meet. They meet during a coffee shop encounter where Charlie photographs the cover of Emma's book, Googles it, and pretends that he's read it. It's a tiny lie that he uses to gain her affection, but one that sets the tone for the film's fascination with the gap between who we are and who we pretend to be. Their chemistry seems completely authentic, but the film quietly plants the idea that their relationship has more truths yet to be revealed. And during the opening montage that shows Charlie's very first moments with Emma, we cut to other scenes with Charlie and his best friend Mike drafting his wedding vows, and other moments where Mike and his wife Rachel, who are the best man and maid of honor. These scenes are brisk, funny, and observational as the four of them taste wedding menu samples, argue about DJs, and navigate the absurdities of the wedding industrial complex. The tone is still comedic, but the director keeps inserting micro-tensions like Charlie's slight irritability, Emma's distractedness, and Rachel's judgmental streak. And then the moment comes that detonates the entire narrative. Charlie, Emma, Mike, and Rachel play a game that Rachel and Mike once did before their own wedding, a trust exercise if you will, where everyone confesses the worst thing they've ever done. And what starts as a darkly comic oversharing quickly turns into something far more volatile. Mike kicks things off with a story about using an ex-girlfriend as a human shield during a dog attack. Charlie follows with a confession about cyberbullying a classmate so relentlessly that the kid's family had to relocate. And then Rachel casually drops the most disturbing one yet, saying that as a child she locked a slower friend inside an abandoned RV and left him there. She insists he survived as if somehow that softens what she did. And then we finally get to Emma. She's clearly nervous and already regretting agreeing to the game, but pushes forward with her story anyway. And what comes out of her mouth instantly changes the foundation of the narrative. Emma admits that when she was 15, being lonely, isolated, and desperate for connection, she planned a school shooting. She didn't go through with it, but she came close enough to practice with her father's rifle. Testing the rifle also ruptured her eardrum, the same detail that made her meet cute with Charlie at the start of the film so charming. Everyone at the table freezes as Charlie tries to play it off with nervous half smiles, Mike not knowing where to look, and Rachel reacting with a kind of moral outrage, adding that her cousin was paralyzed because of a shooting. And Emma, realizing what she's just said out loud, immediately spirals into embarrassment, which culminates in her literally vomiting from the stress and alcohol. But the damage is done and there's no taking back what she said. And with the wedding only days away, Charlie is left completely rattled. The question that begins to eat at him slowly then all at once is whether he truly knows the woman he's about to marry, or whether this revelation exposes a part of her that he cannot trust. The film also begins to cut back and forth between present-day Emma and her teenage self, meticulously planning the shooting that she never committed. These flashbacks are designed to make Charlie's internal crisis feel immediate and almost suffocating. And every glimpse of young Emma assembling her plan that we get sharpens the question hanging over the story in who Charlie is really marrying. What's striking is that the director doesn't turn this into a political lecture, as rather he leans into the discomfort of it. We learn of young Emma's alienation, her cold detachment, and her inability to grasp the weight of what she's preparing. But we also learn why she never carried out the attack, as the same week she was preparing for it, a shooting at a nearby mall killed one of her classmates. The shock of that incident pulled her into a student gun control group, gave her a social circle for the first time, and quietly dissolved her violent intentions. So in her mind, she didn't do anything, as she only thought about it and then moved on. But after hearing this story, Charlie can't move on himself. He's stuck trying to reconcile two versions of the same woman he fell in love with and the Emma who once stood on the edge of something monstrous. And as their friends also react with judgment, fear, and moral superiority, he becomes painfully aware that loving her and defending her are suddenly two very different things. By the time the wedding day arrives, both Charlie and Emma are hanging on by a thread. Emma is doing everything she can to keep herself together while enduring Rachel's barely disguised hostility, which has only intensified since the confession. Meanwhile, Charlie has created a whole new problem of his own. The day before, during lunch at work, he tried to talk through the situation with his co-worker Misha, framing it as a hypothetical, as if that would make it less real. But the conversation spirals, his anxiety takes over, and in a moment of panic and confusion, he makes a clumsy pass at her. It doesn't go all the way, but it goes far enough to become another issue going into the wedding. And on top of this, Rachel decides that she can't stand beside Emma. It's a dramatic, self-righteous stance that threatens to blow up the entire day. But Charlie, desperate to keep the wedding from collapsing before it even begins, manages to talk her back into coming. At first, the wedding seems like it might actually hold together, and for a brief moment, Charlie and Emma look like two people trying to pretend everything is normal. But that all cracks fast. Rachel steps up for her maid of honor speech, and instead of warmth, she delivers a tight passive-aggressive monologue that leaves Emma visibly rattled. It's the kind of speech where every compliment feels fake. So shaken, Emma slips away to the bathroom to calm herself down, and that's where she has enough of it. She overhears Misha talking about a school shooting with just enough context to make her panic. She rushes back to Charlie and demands to know whether he told anyone about her confession. He lies, insisting that he hasn't said a word, and Emma immediately assumes that Rachel has been spreading it, so she storms out, finds Misha, and drags her back to the room to clear things up. But the moment that Misha walks in, she completely misreads the situation. Thinking she's being confronted about their secret, she blurts out the truth that she and Charlie kissed. Emma feels betrayed, and it hits her harder than the confession. They eventually return to their table just in time for the newlywed speeches, and when Charlie goes first, it's a disaster. He rambles about how Emma didn't do anything, trying to defend her past while simultaneously confessing to cheating with Misha. The room is completely shocked at what he says, and in hearing that he kissed Misha, her boyfriend launches himself at Charlie, ending the wedding in complete chaos. This then brings us to the final scenes of the film. Charlie returns to their apartment looking like he's been through a war, with his tuxedo stained with blood, his face swollen and bruised. Earlier in the movie, him and Emma joked about sneaking off to a diner after their wedding, grabbing greasy comfort food because they knew they'd be too stressed to eat during the reception. It was a small, sweet fantasy and one of the few moments where they felt like a real couple. So Charlie ends up going there. He sits alone in a booth, orders food with total exhaustion, and then quietly Emma walks in. She doesn't rush to him or make a scene, she just passes by, orders her food at the counter, and then approaches his table with a simple question. He agrees and immediately starts to break down, apologizing and trying to explain everything at once. But Emma stops him, and instead of rehashing the disaster that they've just been through, she initiates the same roleplay that they had when they first met, and the roleplay that once helped them reconnect. Earlier in the film, she tried using it as a way to rebuild intimacy, but Charlie rejected it. So she introduces herself as if they're strangers meeting for the first time here, and she asks if he lives nearby, and Charlie plays along with it. They take each other's hands, and for the first time in what feels like hours, they smile with authenticity. The movie ends on that fragile moment, with two people choosing, despite everything, to try again. Not with a grand gesture, not with a perfect resolution, but with a quiet reset. It's essentially a new beginning disguised as small talk during a late night dinner. So as a whole, the film uses the school shooting subplot as a lens to explore something much broader. And that is the uncomfortable truth that everyone carries a version of their worst self. Throughout the story, we see Charlie, Emma, and even the supporting characters as people who are far more complex than their lowest moments. The movie keeps returning to the idea that it's incredibly difficult to look past someone's darkest mistake, yet growth, remorse, and time can reshape who they become. And importantly, it never tries to rationalize Emma's original plan, as it's presented as something horrific with real human consequences. But the narrative also acknowledges that intrusive, destructive thoughts aren't unique to her. Many people have brushed up against impulses that they're ashamed of, and the film argues that those thoughts don't have to define a person. Rachel judges Emma for something she didn't do and eventually campaigned against, but she didn't get nearly as much heat for what she did. The movie frames Emma as someone who stepped back from the brink because she made a choice, however imperfect the circumstances. Charlie's own failures may be far less severe, but they still matter, and the film doesn't let him off the hook either. So for the both of them, forgiveness becomes the only path forward. Their relationship survives not because their mistakes cancel each other out, but because they're willing to confront them honestly. The story contrasts their extremes with the things confessed by others, reinforcing the film's central idea that people are messy, flawed, and capable of change. So in the end, the drama is less about the shock of what Emma almost did, and more about how mistakes, small or catastrophic, can shape the way we see the people we love. It's a film that leans into the universal human tendency to screw up, and it argues that empathy and forgiveness are often more meaningful than judgment. On top of this, the film is titled The Drama because the entire story is built around the idea that the most destructive moments in our lives often come not from grand tragedies, but from the messy, spiraling, deeply human drama we create for ourselves. The director uses the title almost ironically, as on the surface, the characters treat everything, whether confessions, betrayals, or moral failures, as if it's just interpersonal chaos. It's the kind of gossip-fueled tension you'd expect before a wedding. But underneath that, the film is dissecting something far heavier in how a single past action, or even the idea of one, can explode into a full-blown crisis when dragged into the present. Calling it the drama highlights the absurdity of how these characters try to manage life-altering revelations with the same emotional tools they use for petty arguments or relationship squabbles. The title becomes a commentary in itself, in that this isn't just a drama in the casual sense, as it's the kind of drama that exposes who people really are. So what were my overall thoughts on A24's The Drama? Well, the film feels engineered for lots of discourse, but the remarkable thing is that by the end, the film actually earns it. Kristoffer Borgli, whose previous work with Dream Scenario already proved his appetite for creating discomfort, and this film pushes even further into the territory of moral provocation, relationship psychology, and the uneasy comedy of human hypocrisy. What begins as a glossy, star-powered wedding week dramedy quickly mutates into something darker, stranger, and far more confrontational. And what matters more than the twist itself is the emotional fallout in the way Charlie spirals, the way Emma retreats, and the way their friends become unwilling mirrors of judgment, fear, and moral posturing. The film weaponizes discomfort, turning a simple question of how well you really know your partner into a psychological minefield. The director uses rapid-fire editing, sound dropouts, and escalating tension to trap viewers inside Charlie's unraveling psyche, and the film's pacing, driven by editor Joshua Raymond Lee, keeps the emotional temperature rising through quick cuts that mimic panic, denial, and the desperate search for clarity. What really anchors the film, though, is its central performances. Zendaya delivers a layered, quietly devastating portrayal of a woman whose past threatens to eclipse her present, while Robert Pattinson gives us a manic, vulnerable, and painfully human portrayal of Charlie. Their chemistry is intentionally disconcerting as it's warm enough to believe in and brittle enough to break under pressure. And add on supporting turns from Alana Haim and Mamoudou Athie, who add texture, grounding the film's more outrageous moments with a lot of its humour and unease. The drama is definitely a film that's going to be polarising with its audacity, but I think it did a good job in being sharp, darkly funny, and conversational starting drama. Ultimately, A24's The Drama is less about the revelation itself and more about the messy, contradictory ways that people respond to moral ambiguity. It's a film that refuses to comfort, refuses to resolve neatly, and refuses to let its viewers sit passively. Whether you love it or hate it, I think you'll walk out wanting to talk about it, and that, perhaps more than anything, is exactly the director's true intention. But that was my breakdown and review of A24's The Drama. If you have seen the film, then let me know down below in the comment section what you thought of it, and whether you agree with the points I made in my review. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, rating, and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.